In this episode, I'm going to talk about how to manage files on a collaborative e-learning project. Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Ask Sabramowicz. My name is Anna Sabramowicz, and on this show, I answer your instructional design questions that you send me on Twitter using the hashtag AskSabramowicz. Anyways, let's get to our question for the day.
EJ LeBlanc asks, really great video and email. Can you do a video on managing project files for collaborative e-learning projects?
EJ, excellent question. And also, thank you for being a subscriber to my newsletter. Like that plug there? Anyways, okay, so EJ, I'm going to tell you about my process, and you'll see a lot of software that I'm referring to. The reason I'm referring to it, I don't like throwing out lists of software, but the reason I'm picking this stuff is because that's what I work with, and I find it simple and effective, and you may use other things, but basically there are certain structures with this software that help you kind of integrate your big vision as far as e-learning goes. And I use this for all kinds of projects, not just specifically e-learning, but any kind of learning design project. So let's get into it. First is Dropbox. So you may have heard of Dropbox. It's basically a giant storage facility in the cloud, and it allows you to share your files and store them. And what I like about it the most is that the storage is fairly cheap, and it backs up all your files automatically. I think you have to pay a little extra for that, but you will never lose any of your files, which is fantastic. Even if somebody deletes them, you may go back and retrieve them. Also, as far as setting it up and somebody who's not even technically savvy being able to join your Dropbox folder to access your files, super easy to set up. So it's great for collaborative teams, especially if people are just learning about collaborating online. And what's great is you can also control the access that people have. So it's very specific to them. It's very specific to people that you want to give access to. Now, there are some cons to Dropbox, and the problem with Dropbox is that it becomes this big repository where sometimes people feel they can just start dumping all their files in. And then what happens is if you don't set the rules for how to name all those files, it just can get out of control, and managing some naming conventions for files, if you wanted to, becomes just crazy. And usually I found people don't listen to those things, even when you have best intentions and saying, you know, let's follow these protocols. Nope. So, oh yeah, this one's really important. When you have files in Dropbox, somebody's put them there on your team who thinks they're important, but the name tells you so very little about what the file is. So it gives you very little context of when you're going to use it and why they thought it was important. So I think that's why Dropbox alone is not a good place to have your teammates collaborate. It's a good storage repository, but as far as adding that context, you need something else, and that is Basecamp. Okay, so Basecamp is project management software, and it's web-based. And here are some of the pros for Basecamp. And by the way, I'm not affiliated with any of these, but I love Basecamp. Extremely easy to set up, and what's cool is that if you run multiple projects that are kind of the same, what you can do is you can template your processes and basically replicate a new project every single time. And some people will find this a negative, but I think it is a positive, is that it's extremely basic. Like, you only have the features that you need. And I think that is awesome because you never get lost in the software. With Basecamp, you focus on your project. You're not focusing on tweaking features or pulling specific reports. It's so focused on what you actually want to accomplish that it's in the background, like all good software should be, as far as I'm concerned. And the only, well, I guess some of the cons would be that if you're working with or collaborating with people who have already established project management software, or they've been working on projects for a while, a lot of the project software out there is institution-based, so it could be MS Project, and they're used to seeing certain things, and they're used to certain types of spreadsheets and access, and all of a sudden you're asking them to learn something new. Not that it is actually very difficult, but what I think happens here is that because it's new, there's resistance to it, so you have to become a really good salesperson when you're initiating people into your projects, and set some expectations around what you want to accomplish. Now, so that was Basecamp. Now, Google Docs. What is awesome about Google Docs, and Google Docs is basically the extension of word processing software online as well. It's web-based as well, and it's also awesome to collaborate in. But look at my list here, it's huge. So pros, there's tons of storage, like you're really never going to run out unless you're saving some crazy files in there. What's awesome too is that all of your files that you create in Google Docs or you upload to Google Docs, you can then export into Word back again for people who have to collaborate in Word, or you can export them to PDF, which is a beautiful thing, as we all know. Now, what's cool now is that Basecamp and Google Docs have merged, integrated, so it's very easy to share documents using Basecamp. And also, the thing that I think we'll all love is the Google Docs, as you work through them and as every single person participates, you are, that kind of change history is saved for you. And what's awesome is that you can get very, very discreet about what kind of feedback you're getting from people on these documents. So if you want people to just simply have full access and be able to modify as they wish, they can do that. But if you want people to just have a review-only type of responsibility of your documents, you can really scale that down so that what you're getting is really focused and targeted kind of feedback on your documents. Now, speaking of targeted, actually, I'll get that in a minute because I have to finish the cons here. The only thing I really found with Google Docs is that kind of almost like with the project management software, people are already indoctrinated in a certain way. They're used to certain things. So when you're introducing them to Google Docs, they're hesitant and it's new, but it's also simpler. But they have to set up a Google account to be able to edit the same way you do and to collaborate. So that takes up a little bit of time. And I suggest actually having some fun sessions where you're collaborating with people on a document so they can see how effortless and effective it can be. Now, okay, so remember I was talking about really limiting the kind of access you can give people so you can get really specific feedback. Now, as an e-learning developer, you've probably found that when you show subject matter experts or project sponsors or whatever, members of your team, you show them a prototype that you're working on in e-learning, what happens is, most times, people will give you way more feedback on way more things than you actually need. So if you're building out a prototype of a wireframe of an interaction for e-learning, and you upload that and make it available for a subject matter expert, they sometimes will comment on things like the background colors and, let's say, the shapes of things or the font you're using, while really what you want is their feedback on whether that was logical or whether that was a pleasant experience for them when they're working through an activity or a module. So how you solve this is use Screenflow, which this is Screenflow is video recording software, but what you can do with Screenflow is when you have a project, you can record your screen as you're working through your e-learning segments, and then the developer or the instructional designer can not only describe the choices they made and why they made them, but they can also say, okay, see this sequence here? I'd like you to give me feedback on this. And so what happens is, I mean, you can record this. This is just one of the recording softwares that you can use. There's others out there. So what I love about Screenflow is the fact that it is It's one of those things that it is stripped down to the basics so you can quickly produce these videos, and it even records your face as you're talking. And the con here, I think the only one is really for me, is that it's Mac only. So other people who are using PCs would have to get different software. And I'm sure somebody will recommend it in the comments. I certainly hope you do. Anyways, so all of these cost money. Google Docs is free, but the biggest thing here that you have to think about is that there has to be an underlying strategy, a structure that holds all of these things together and remains consistent throughout. So the way you do that would be, whoops, I'll go over here. This is number one. First, you want to set up your structure. So for me, personally, I have 3 development phases that I work through. So I set that up initially in Basecamp, where we have these to-do lists that are beautiful, measurable. And what happens is every time I set up these tasks in Basecamp, then I can attach a specific Google document that is attached to that task. In Basecamp, I can create a description of what I want done with that specific document, and also where it should go after. Maybe you should assign it to the next person to review it. Create that sequence, and then once these are collaborated on and finalized, I can save my super awesome copies in here. But because now I have these phases over here that I'm working with, what I should do in Dropbox is replicate the phase kind of layout. So I'll have files that correlate to the phases in Basecamp, and then my files are all organized according to these specific times that I'm moving through my development project. And then what you do also is when you're going through your prototypes, you would take those files that you're working on, or the actual e-learning prototypes that you have embedded, let's say, in a web page, so that somebody can work through it, and then you'd attach a little Screenflow movie to it and say, this is the kind of feedback I want, and you do that all in Basecamp. But this is the biggest thing. Tie these together with a game plan or your development flow. And the other thing I want you to think about is there's lots of software out there. If nobody is using it, if you haven't really brought your team on board, it will be pointless to have it. And regardless of how great it is, if your people are not using it, then there's all the efficiency is lost. If you're the only one using that software, there's no effect. The other thing I want you to think about is think simplicity. And I find all of these kind of are along that path. Very simple, bare minimum. And you think about how much or how little do you need to be productive and efficient. Oh, good. That is the word that I wrote there. I was going to say efficient. Okay, so that's it. I want you to submit your questions, please, using Twitter, and use the hashtag #AskSabramowicz. And also, please subscribe, because I want you to get more of these in your mailbox, and I want to do more of them. Question of the day. Oh yeah, okay. This is going to be a good one. Has your process for actually file management become easier with all the new software? Why or why not? So I wanted to thank you for watching, and thank you for the wonderful question, EJ, and I'll see you next time.